if you truly want to put medications last, then the number one first strategic shift you probably need to make is to shift your priority order of which doctor you call first. All right, parents, here we go. Another awesome episode of the Experience Miracles podcast. And this one is awesome and not awesome at the same time. I can promise you that. This one is exciting and frustrating at the same time. This one is encouraging and disheartening and heartbreaking at the same time. And you're like, wow, well, that's quite an intro. Which one of these is going to win out, the good news or the bad news? And I promise you this, the good news is going to win out. And so, the old adage, hey, I got good news and bad news. Which do you want me to start with? Well, I'm recording this and you got to listen to it in whatever order I put that out for. So let's do the bad news first, okay? See, the reality when we scale up to what we kind of always call the 30,000 foot view of what's going on with our kids and this current generation of kids, especially here in the United States, but really what we're talking about all the time on this podcast, it's everywhere, especially the more developed the country, the more sick the kids, right? The more chronic illness, the more medications, is this generational struggle that is actually leading to a generational shift. So I promise you this, we're going to end up with good news because there is so much more good news. There's so much exciting momentum here as to what's going on with this generation of kiddos. And I know that you out there listening have so much to do with this because either A, you're listening because you've already made this shift. You've already made this transformation with the direction, with the decisions, with the actions you take and do not take with your kids' health, and that'll make sense when we get done with this episode. Or you're here because you want to. You're here because you're ready to make that shift. You're ready to put the conventional pediatrician and prescription medications as the last choice, last resort for your family. And that's what we're talking about. But first, let's face head on where we are on a grand, large scale with our kiddos. Now, right now, today, the 2023 prescription drug use statistics by age group are not something that's going to make you feel good the first few minutes of this episode. 18% of our children aged 0 to 11 years old are using prescription drugs regularly. Now, this isn't something like an occasional antibiotic, which, by the way, we'll tackle on many podcasts, how many different respiratory and other sort of infections you can handle without antibiotics because antibiotics have a whole host of short and long-term challenges to your children's health. The earlier they're put on antibiotics, the more perfect storm trouble that brews. But 18% of kids under the age of 11 on a prescription drug within the last 30 days. 27%, so almost 1 out of 3 adolescents, so our teenagers, middle schoolers, 12 to 19 years old. And I think we're always talking about pediatrics, but this is also the full family here, conversation with PX docs. 47% of adults, so half of adults 20 to 59, have used at least one prescription medication last 30 days. And this one, not necessarily my forte or specialty, but 85% of adults age 60. That is obviously the biggest market for the cajillion billion-dollar industry that is prescription medications. And it's one thing at that age group, but man, they've been coming after our kids for a long time as well. And we're going to map out why. We're going to map out how we've got here. But most importantly, we're going to map out how to get somewhere else. How do we get our kids healthy again without drugs? That's it. That's the whole PX Docs and Experience Miracles podcast mission. So a couple more stats just to let you know what we're up against. And then I promise you, I can see clinically every day in practice, and I have for the last 10 years, this awesome good news shift that is happening because of this struggle, because of this reality. Parents are waking up, becoming aware and saying, hey, we've got to go in a different direction to get different results, right? So honestly, prescription drug misuse is highest among young adults age 18 to 25. So that demographic is the demographic getting most addicted to prescription medications and so many challenges that come with that. You know, when we grew up, right, obviously the concern was cigarettes and alcohol and those things. And those concerns are still out there for parents, but even more of a concern because it's literally so often has worse side effects and longer term addiction abilities is prescription medications. Now that's the new challenge in high schools and colleges. And 23% of college students have a lifetime history of prescription drug abuse. 23% of kids in college, 1 in 4, not just use prescription drugs, abuse prescription drugs. So what that should get us asking is why or how? That's really probably more of the question we're answering with this podcast. And I can make sense of it for you with a single statement. The reason we have so many kids on prescription drugs and so many kids now abusing and addicted to prescription drugs and dependent upon them is because we've been dependent upon the pediatrician for our primary first choice for healthcare. And this is not a knock against them as humans. This is just understanding and deconstructing the system with which healthcare, sick care, drug care is. And when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So an ear infection, for 30 years, we've known that antibiotics are very not effective for most ear infections because they're viral and they will take care of themselves, especially if you do all the things we teach you to do here on this podcast and PX Docs, and you naturally support and build up the function of the body to deal with the ear infection. But that's just one example. So many kids, and if a child is put on an antibiotic before the age of 12 months, their chances of autoimmune challenges, asthma, allergies, depending upon the research, either go up 4-fold or more. Some research says 8 to 10-fold increase in autoimmune lifetime sick challenges, chronic illness challenges when they're put on a 5 to 10 day antibiotic within the first year of life. So what you have in a prescription drug world is you have a customer, and I'm going to shift this real quick. You have a customer taking a product for 5 to 10 days, and the more often they do that, the more likely they become a lifetime customer dependent upon medications because they're chronically sick. This is not genetic. This is a sequence of actions, and it all can be targeted. It can all come down to the fact that the first call we make, the first place we're supposed to go to keep our kids healthy in the first place, is somebody who's not an expert in health, the general conventional pediatrician. Now, there's incredible, holistic, integrative, rock star pediatricians, functional med pediatricians we're going to interview on this podcast again and again and again so that you get access to them as well, because we strongly believe you should have an incredible medical provider on your team who, when needed, when the emergency is brewing and the body cannot handle it, thank God we have prescription drugs. My son's life was saved by surgeries and medications. This is not a knock against the system. This is a reprioritization and reorganization of the system. But if we are trained as parents to trust the doctor whose only treatment they have, and again, treatment they literally admit within the medical system, we're not going for the root cause. We're just stuffing down symptoms with medications. Well, if we go there first, we get that first, and all of a sudden, that's what happens. Our kids become chronically sick, and more medications come down the pipe. So by being dependent upon that being our family's first doctor, first call for wellness, first call for sickness, the first choice that they're going to make is drugs. That's just how it works. So the single biggest thing that has shifted in the last 10 years. Okay, there we go. Was that about 10 minutes? Not sure here. On the bad news, okay? Told you I'd get to the good news, and here it is. So I've been in clinical practice for just over 15 years now, 16, I guess, just had my anniversary of being a pediatric and nervous system focused family chiropractor. Now, when I first got started, I flew right into what we call the perfect storm. We talked about that a little bit on the podcast. And my first patients were all 17, 18, 19, 21, 23-year-old kids, right? Young adults with autism and Asperger's and anxiety and seizures and epilepsy. And the reason their parents were coming to me for care as they learned about the perfect storm or they had other professionals refer them in to us is truly as a last resort. So many of our seizure patients and our anxiety patients, they were literally what is called the prescription drugs. They've gone through all of them. They literally were just non-responsive anymore, because even when medications work for a short season for ADHD or for seizures or for whatever it is to stuff down the symptoms, because they're not getting to the root cause, because they're an outside-in intervention, the body will eventually become immune to them. You can think of that just like cigarettes or alcohol on a negative front. The more somebody drinks, the more they need to get the same dose-effect relationship, right? So that's where addiction builds. It's the same with medications, especially in the neuropsych world or the seizure world. Now, on the good news, let me just not give you a bad analogy of that. Same with health. The more you go run, I don't know this, I'm married to a marathon runner. I am short and squatty, so I love squatting and CrossFitting, but the more I CrossFit, the better I get at CrossFit. The more my wife and my son, our miracle man who now had cardiopulmonary surgeries and brain damage and now wins cross-country races, so the more he runs, the better he gets at it. The body learns bad and good. Now, what's awesome is this generation of parents, is learning these results are bad. Going to the conventional pediatrician and going to medications first has led to very clearly really not good results. And so in the beginning of my practice, everybody was medicated. I literally have this down. We're big stat trackers in the practice. And so about 80 to 85% of our patients, probably pushing close to 90% when you look at the teenagers and adults, they were medicated. And most of them were on 4, 5, 6 different medications. By the time we got started focusing on the root cause, getting to their nervous system, and working on what's called neuro-focused healing or neurological reorganization. Now, that was the reality then, and that's not the reality now. Today, we serve the same population. We have patients coming from all over the world for intensive programs, and we see a lot of younger kids too, so that has something to do with this shift because word is getting out to younger parents to get natural health, to get neurologically focused chiropractic into their family's health plan, care plan, earlier and before medications. I'll never forget, this goes back about 7 years ago. Every one of our new patients, especially if it's in this perfect storm neurofocus world, we do a phone consult first. So before the kiddo comes in and has to sit, no kid, whether they're going through sensory challenges or not, likes to sit around for a half hour while their parents talk about them with the doctor and go through all the stuff they struggle with. So long ago, we shifted our procedures, and when a new patient's coming in to our practices, all PX docs do this, we get on the phone first. So we do it during the day, kids at school or wherever they may be, and we're able to just connect with moms and dads and do what no other doctors do, but PX doctors excel at, and that is actually listen. So we go all the way back into the case history. We go back to fertility, preconception, pregnancy, labor delivery, early childhood, development, medications, you name it. And so one of these phone consults that I was doing with the child, and they were coming in for ADHD-ish. And I say ish because we do not treat, we do not diagnose, we do not ever, and you know that from this podcast and everything we do with PX Docs, this is not a treatment. Because when you're addressing the root cause, you're taking care of that patient's neurophysiology. You're not treating anything. You're not curing anything. You're not diagnosing anything. So whenever we talk about conditions here, it's just to give you context. It's just to give you understanding. Same as when we do one-on-one with parents. So the primary diagnosis that awesomely this kid did not officially have yet, you'll hear why, because his mom is a boss, and so many of you are, they hadn't gone yet. Now, he had struggled in school for 2, 3, 4 years, and behavior was getting worse, focus was getting worse, grades were getting worse. And so the teachers, as traditional schools often work with traditional conventional medicine and the pharmaceutical system, they were pushing this mom to get her child to the pediatrician, to a neurologist, and it would take, this is how it works. There's no test for ADHD. They blame chemical imbalance, which I'll take apart on another podcast. It is a chemical imbalance, but those chemicals are neurotransmitters, neurochemicals. They literally transmit signals and messages for the nervous system. So the imbalance of ADHD and anxiety and all these challenges first exist in the central and autonomic nervous system, and then serotonin and dopamine and the chemicals get off balance. It's not a chemistry imbalance until it's a neurology imbalance. So we'll break that down on a full podcast episode soon and cover the research behind how incomplete the chemical imbalance theory is for ADHD. But anyways, this mom was, of course, being pressured by school to go do that. And so one of the things that I had just naturally been saying, so this is neurology right here, and we never say the same thing to all moms and dads because now there's similarities. We're talking about the nervous system, we're talking about subluxation, we're talking about all these things that you hear about again and again here on this podcast. And so that's like a consult that's going on. And so I think I said something to the tune of, well, I'm so glad you got a hold of us because so often we joke with our staff up front, we should answer the phone, welcome to the last resort. And this boss mom caught me and stopped me dead in my tracks. And she said, oh no, you are not the last resort. The neurologist and medication is the last resort. I was on that myself as a kid. I was diagnosed with ADHD and put on Ritalin and stimulant medications. And it's taken me most of my lifetime to get off of them and to get my brain and nervous system better and balanced to where my ADHD is not a deficit and not a struggle, but it's a superpower. And I'm thankful that I have it because I manage it now without medications. And I've never had a mom say so, well, to that degree, especially for me being a ADHD sort of world myself and seeing it no longer be a deficit, but now be a superpower. I don't know that I've ever had a phone consult where a mom just stopped me dead in my tracks and said something more relatable and more congruent to our entire freaking mission than that. But it was also where I realized that the momentum had shifted. We are now awesomely living it through a different generation of parents. We now, as parents, have Google, have Facebook, have Instagram, okay? And so we have access to information outside of the pediatrician's office. Now, does that make everyone inside that office happy? It certainly doesn't. And I'm sure you've run into many conversations, or at least one with your pediatrician, where you simply ask them questions about research you did yourself and they dismissed it. Did you go to medical school? No, but I'm this kid's freaking parent, so you better listen to me. And take that one home, by the way. If you have a doctor who doesn't listen, doesn't engage in conversation, and isn't willing to partner with you, but if you have a doctor who is a dictator, you need to get rid of that doctor yesterday, because there's tons of pediatricians, there's tons of especially pediatric PX doctors out there who will partner with you, who will listen with you, who will work alongside you and the rest of your team to get your child better. So this mom stopped me in my tracks and said, "You're not last resort, buddy. You are second to last, though." So that's where we can kind of turn the corner. And the last part of this podcast episode is the exciting news. In a practice now, only about 1 in 5 of our patients, so 20% of our patients, are now medicated by the time we get started with neurologically focused chiropractic. Now, coming back to the 80% number. So 80% of them in the beginning of my career, just 10 to 15 years ago, were medicated. 80% of our patients, grade schoolers, teenagers, and all of that. Now, 80% are not medicated. So there's been a significant shift in giving chiropractic a try early. And I got one more stat on this 80%. What's exciting and what you really need to stay with us on this podcast, because we're going to cover all of these innards and granular details around this next stat in future episodes. But now 80% of our patients, if not a little bit more, have already gone gluten-free, casein-free, red dye number 40-free, have already worked on the gut, have already detoxed, have already tried to restore the microbiome, have already done PT, OT, speech therapy, maybe even counseling, maybe all sorts. Most of the patients, so where I used to have our intake paperwork, if you can imagine, right? You've all filled out paperwork for your kiddos. And if your kiddos are on about, there's a section of our paperwork that says, hey, please list out their prescription medications. Those boxes used to be jam-packed full early in my career. Now they're not. 80% of the time they're blank. That's awesome. That's a shift. That's us waking up and realizing there's other natural solutions and options that can get to the root cause and help our kids heal. Now there's another box that we had to literally update our paperwork and say, list all the supplementation, list all the homeopathics, list all the natural stuff your kiddo is on. And we love seeing that box chock full. Now, there's one more lesson before we wrap up this particular episode. What does that still mean, though? So the good news is there's a huge shift where us as parents today are putting medications last, not first. And I just think we just know statistically, commonsensically, all the things. We just know that's probably the way to go, right? That is the way to go, that we will need perhaps medications. Our kids will have a broken bone. Our kids will have a nasty infection. So we want to have an amazing pediatrician. We want a incredible sick care pharmaceutical system, all right? I'm a different kind of chiropractor. PX Docs is different. We are not putting down pharmaceuticals. We are not putting down the pediatrician. We are reorganizing things. We are reshifting things to say, when do we need them? Not first, okay? The vast majority of challenges our kids are going through are chronic in today's world. And chronic health needs health restoration and reorganization and rebuilding. Medications don't do that. In fact, they do the antithesis and opposite of that. So we need a different kind of doctor to slide to the front of the order and say, what if we start with natural health first? Well, now I've got 80% of our population in our patient base who has gone to the nines on natural health But the last lesson in this episode here is, but they're still coming into us, right? For nervous system focused chiropractic care. So what that reveals through process of elimination, if you will, is that while working on the gut, getting gluten-free, getting casein-free, getting all these movement-based, motor-based therapies for your child is freaking phenomenal. And every one of these families that's done a bunch with that has certainly seen improvements in gut health and motor planning and some of these things. But generally they've plateaued or they've reached a stuck spot where their child's struggles, to whatever degree, often still a pretty large degree, are still there. So what that reveals is there's still something else as the real deep root cause of that child's challenges. And that's subluxation. That's challenges with the vagus nerve and dysautonomia and all these terms that we talk about on this podcast and on our website, pxdocs.com, again and again and again, because the nervous system controls the gut. The nervous system controls the immune system and its modulation and its ability to limit and shut down inflammation. The nervous system controls what's called motor tone and coordination. So if we have a stressed out, stuck on sympathetic nervous system and a shut down, suppressed, what's called parasympathetic vagal nerve system, which is where growing and healing and developing and digesting and anti-inflammation and social emotional regulation is all done through something called the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic system. So now the thing that we are still continuing on our mission with PX Docs to talk about on every episode of this podcast, every article we write, every reel we post on Instagram, is how important the nervous system is for our kids' health. We really actually have three different forms or three different categories of healthcare. And we can talk about that in a pediatric sense. You've got the conventional pediatrician who, for most of the last many generations, and I see a massive shift happening right now, where instead of them being first, maybe they go to third. Now, many families listening in, especially if you found a podcast like this, where you're looking at root cause and natural health, you've gone natural. You've got a functional med doctor. You've got a rock star nurse practitioner. We have an incredible team of functional integrative nurse practitioners who are the first call, first people we go to when our kids are needed. And they're incredible. And if something happened, an emergency, a crisis, I trust them to handle the medical side of things as well. In addition to, they're always going to go natural. They're always going to support our children's bodies to heal first. So Jessica, our well-rooted team, she'll be interviewed on this, and her whole team. They're incredible. And so many of you hopefully have already made that shift, and you have that kind of doctor or practitioner up first. But maybe what you're missing is your neurologically focused chiropractor. And so what we really see is parents of this generation are more empowered, more educated, and more freaking on board with putting prescriptions last, with putting that kind of doctor that leads to that kind of treatment last, and saying, hey, thank God we have you to save lives when we need them, but to build health, to promote health, to continue to build and promote resiliency and adaptability and just kick-ass health in our kids, well, what we need is a different kind of doctor to lead that charge. And I'm thinking for so many of you, what may still be missing is a neurologically focused pediatric and family chiropractor. So to leave you with this, parents, is if you truly want to put medications last, then the number one first strategic shift you probably need to make is to shift your priority order of which doctor you call first, which provider you go to first with your challenges, with your questions, and again, on the best side, prevention and wellness. And so the vast majority of our patients at our practice and amongst all the PX docs, they may get started with pediatric chiropractic as their second to last choice, like the mom in the story we shared today, or maybe their last choice. Maybe you are listening and your child is on medications. That's awesome. That's fine. This direction is still the way towards natural, full, complete healing. And if we get the nervous system and we get their physiological system and we get everything to heal and get back in balance and get back to health and get back to development, guess what? They may not need anymore. So this is still the same direction if you're one of those parents who out there who turned to that last resort already because your kiddo was struggling. Come on, we fully empathize. We fully understand. When the house is on fire, call the fire department. When your kiddo is struggling, give him a lifesaver, all right? Give him a support. Give him a life jacket. And so often that's what medications are. So we get it. We feel you. We're here for you. The order of this shift is good for us and every family, no matter where we are, because the nervous system is the boss. The nervous system is the most important system when it comes to our health altogether. So if you want prescription medications to be last choice for your family and only used in emergency crisis interventions, then shift to a neurologically focused pediatric chiropractor as your primary portal of healthcare. And so most of our families, even though they may start with this as something new, they shift their entire system, if you will, and they come to us on regular. Most patients, our wellness patients, will get adjusted once a week because life lived at 100% is freaking awesome. It's better than 95%, 85%, and 70% or less, which is where a lot of our patients start when it comes to the function of their nervous system. And so that may be the doctor you want first for your family because it fits your philosophy, it fits your principles, it fits the outcomes, most importantly, you want, which is kids who are healthy, strong, resilient, and not dependent upon medication. The coolest thing about chiropractors leading the health for your family is it's not just our adjustments, but it's our conversations. We're empowering, we educate, we inform our patients, and kids included. We go right to them and we say, you know, God designed you to be healthy. Everything about how your nervous system and your body works is brilliant. And you got everything you need in there, buddy, to be healthy, to be awesome, to be great at whatever it is that you want to do. This is a very personalized conversation for every kiddo. We get to know them and then we set their goals in motion. We don't try and make every kid like every other kiddo. And we say, you know what? The way that works though is we got to put effort in. We got to do things that build health. So getting adjusted, that gets rid of that stress, that gets rid of the tension that your body built up from just naturally growing and doing everything else. So there you go. Now we're building health through your nervous system. That's our job as your chiropractor. But your job, kiddos, moms, dads, everybody, is to be healthy, to be active, to take care of your sleep, to eat clean, to all the things, right? And so if you need that for your family, if you need a new doctor to give a new set of directions and decisions and actions to get a new set of outcomes, healthy kids instead of sick ones, then what I want you to do is to go to our website, www.pxdocs.com, and you'll see it all over there. Find a PX doc. It's the easiest, most apparent tab, because the whole goal of this is to get you and your family in action towards better health. Now, when you move towards pediatric chiropractic and managing health through the nervous system and naturally, it's awesome because you get to move away from dependency on medications. So we will stay in this fight. We will stay on this mission forever because those stats we reviewed, 1 out of 4 college kids literally dependent and abusing prescription medications, that probably started for them 2 decades before the dependency set up shop. It started because they were always taken to the pediatrician, and that's where health was supposed to come from. And the opposite of health typically comes from that pathway. So when kids are sick and stressed and anxious and depressed and can't focus and can't sleep and can't stay healthy and can't take one cold and get over it in less than 1 decade, well, here come the drugs, here come the medications. And so to hold those off, shift the doctor that you call first and you trust first. Find your family a PX doctor right away. If you have any questions at all, you can always reach out to us. If you're not already following us on Instagram, that's at PX Docs. So same short letters there that the website and the URL is. Over on Facebook, you can search my name, Dr. Tony Ebel, and the PX Docs. And we're over there on Facebook, YouTube, PX Docs. Anything you need, reach out to us. You'll find our directory there on the website so that you can find your new first call, first choice, first stop doctor, and you can take it from there. And if you go to the directory and you don't find someone near you, then definitely there's a form right there as well. You can reach out to us and we'll find and we'll train and we'll create an incredible PX doctor and neurologically focused chiropractor for you. Thanks for listening to this one. Please share it. Please like it. Please review. I'm new to podcasting, so I don't know exactly what to tell you what to do at the end of this. And I'm most interested in you getting your kids healthy to their fullest potential. And that's what PX Docs do. So please find your local PX Doc. Give them a call. Get connected. Check it out. It'll transform your family's life, not just in this generation, but I'm confident for generations to come.